I've been on this bench for over 40 years, and I thought I'd seen every brand of arrogance walk through my courtroom doors. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the moment. Victoria Sterling looked me directly in the eye and said, "Do you have any idea who my father is?" The silence that followed was deafening, and what happened in the next 37 minutes didn't just change her life. It sent a message that echoed far beyond these courtroom walls. Money doesn't make you untouchable. Not here. Not ever. The case file was simple enough on paper. Victoria Ann Sterling, 23 years old, charged with assault and battery, destruction of property, and resisting arrest. She'd attacked a coffee shop employee, thrown a laptop at her, caused a concussion, and when the police arrived, she'd literally told the officer to Google her last name before attempting to leave the scene. The entire incident was captured on the coffee shop's security cameras, open and shut. But here's what made this interesting. Victoria's father was Marcus Sterling, CEO of Sterling Global Investments. Personal net worth of $4.7 billion. The family owned a private island, 3 estates, and Marcus had just been named to the Forbes 100 list for the 5th consecutive year. And Victoria clearly believed that made her immune to consequence. She arrived 15 minutes late. Not stuck in traffic late. Deliberately, provocatively late. Her attorney rushed in first, a senior partner from one of those white shoe law firms with offices in 30 countries. He was apologizing before he even reached the bench. Victoria followed at her own pace, and I mean her own pace. She walked like she was on a runway, not entering a courtroom where she'd been charged with putting a 21-year-old college student in the hospital. The outfit alone told me everything I needed to know. Designer blazer, probably $5,000. Handbag I recognized from a magazine my clerk reads, $12,000, limited edition. Shoes that clicked against my courtroom floor with a rhythm that said, "I'm more important than whatever's happening here," and sunglasses. Massive sunglasses that she kept on even as she approached her table. I let her get comfortable. Sometimes the best strategy is watching people reveal themselves. "Miss Sterling," I said, my voice cutting through the murmur in the gallery. "Remove your sunglasses. This is a courtroom, not a resort." She paused, actually paused like she was considering whether to comply. Then, with exaggerated slowness, she lifted them onto her head. "Thank you for that small courtesy," I continued. "Now, would you care to explain why you're 15 minutes late?" She shrugged. One shoulder dismissive, like I'd asked her about a restaurant reservation. "I had a call I needed to take. It was important." "No, Your Honor. No apology." Just a statement of fact, as if her priorities were self-evidently more important than court proceedings. Her attorney jumped in. "Your Honor, we sincerely apologize." I held up my hand. "Counselor, I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to your client." I turned my full attention back to Victoria. "Miss Sterling, when you're ordered to appear in my courtroom at 9 a.m., that's not a suggestion. It's a legal requirement. Do you understand the difference?" "I understand," she said, her tone flat. "But I also understand that some things can't wait." The audacity was breathtaking. I glanced at the gallery. Sitting in the second row was Emily Martinez, the victim. She was a junior at State University, working 3 jobs to pay her way through school. The coffee shop was her morning shift. She sat there in clothes that had clearly been worn multiple times, a visible scar still healing on her forehead from where Victoria's laptop had struck her. She'd taken the bus to get here because she couldn't afford the parking. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. I opened the file. "Miss Sterling, you've been charged with assault and battery against Emily Martinez, a barista at Morrison's Coffee House. According to the police report, you became irate when your coffee order was incorrect, threw your laptop at Miss Martinez, striking her in the head, then attempted to flee when other customers restrained you. Does that sound accurate?" Victoria leaned back in her chair. "That's their version." "Their version," I repeated, "as opposed to your version. My version is that I ordered a very specific drink. She made it wrong 3 times. I was late for a meeting because of her incompetence, and I reacted. It was an accident. An accident. She'd thrown a 3-pound laptop at someone's head and called it an accident." "You reacted," I said slowly, "by throwing your laptop at her face." "I didn't throw it at her face. I threw it down and it bounced." "Physics, Your Honor." "Physics," the gallery gasped. Even her attorney looked like he wanted to disappear. Emily Martinez sat perfectly still, but I saw her hands tighten into fists. I stood up from the bench. When I do that, everyone in the courtroom knows something is about to happen. "Miss Sterling, I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. You put a young woman in the hospital because your coffee was made incorrectly. Your response is to blame physics. Is that really the position you want to take in my courtroom?" For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. But she recovered quickly. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this whole thing is blown out of proportion. My father's already offered to pay all her medical bills. We're willing to settle for whatever amount makes this go away. Make this go away, as if justice were a transaction. As if Emily's concussion, her trauma, her fear could be erased with a check." "Miss Sterling," I said, my voice dropping into that register that makes attorneys nervous. "You seem to be under the impression that your money can resolve this situation. Let me be very clear. Your father's bank account means nothing in here. This isn't a negotiation. This is a court of law. She looked genuinely confused. But we're willing to pay. I don't care what you're willing to pay. Everyone has a price. The words hung in the air like a grenade. The courtroom erupted. People were shouting. My bailiff called for order. Victoria's attorney had his head in his hands, and Victoria herself looked around like she couldn't understand what she'd said wrong. Bailiff, clear the gallery, I said. Everyone out except the parties involved. It took 3 minutes for the room to empty. When we were down to just Victoria, her attorney, Emily, and the court staff, I sat back down. Miss Sterling, did you just suggest that everyone in this courtroom, including me, can be bought? She backpedaled. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant that money solves problems. Money solves problems, I repeated. Let me show you a problem money can't solve. I pulled up the security footage on the courtroom monitor. The video was crystal clear. Victoria at the counter, gesturing angrily. The barista, Emily, remaking the drink for the 3rd time, her hands shaking. Victoria grabbing her laptop from the table. The wind-up, the throw, the sickening impact as it struck Emily directly in the forehead. Emily collapsing. Victoria trying to walk out like nothing had happened. Other customers blocking her path. Her screaming, "Do you know who I am? My father will destroy this place." When the video ended, the silence was absolute. Miss Sterling, that doesn't look like an accident. That looks like assault. She provoked me. She provoked you by making your coffee incorrectly. It's not just the coffee. It's the principle. I'm paying for a service. I expect excellence. The entitlement was staggering. I looked at her attorney. Counselor, have you explained to your client the severity of these charges? He nodded miserably. Extensively, Your Honor? Then I can only assume she chose to ignore your advice. I turned back to Victoria. Tell me about Emily Martinez. What do you know about her? I don't know anything about her. She's just a barista. Just a barista. Emily, I said, gesturing to the young woman in the gallery. Would you please come forward? Emily stood, walking slowly to the witness stand. She was trembling. Emily, tell the court what happened after Miss Sterling struck you with her laptop. Emily's voice was soft but steady. I woke up on the floor. There was blood everywhere. I couldn't see clearly. I thought I was dying. Someone called 911. I spent 6 hours in the emergency room. They said I had a severe concussion, needed 12 stitches, and might have permanent scarring. And your medical bills? I asked. $43,000. I don't have insurance. I'm trying to negotiate a payment plan, but her voice broke. I had to drop 2 of my classes because I can't work as many hours anymore. I get headaches, dizzy spells. My scholarship requires full-time enrollment, so I might lose that too. Victoria was checking her phone under the table. Miss Sterling, I said sharply. Put the phone away and look at Emily. She glanced up annoyed. What? Look, at her. Reluctantly, Victoria turned toward Emily. But there was no recognition in her eyes. No remorse. Nothing. Do you have anything to say to Emily? I asked. Victoria shrugged. Like I said, my dad will pay her bills. What else does she want? What else does she want? I'd reached my limit. Bailiff, bring me the sentencing guidelines for aggravated assault. Victoria's attorney stood quickly. Your Honor, surely we can discuss. Sit down, counselor. Your client has made it abundantly clear that she feels no remorse, takes no responsibility, and believes her wealth exempts her from consequence. I'm about to prove her wrong. I looked directly at Victoria. You asked if I know who your father is. I do. Marcus Sterling, billionaire, philanthropist, chairman of the board for 3 hospitals and 2 universities. Impressive resume. I paused. Completely irrelevant. Her face went pale. You also asked what price Emily wants. Let me tell you what she wants. She wants to finish her degree. She wants her medical bills paid without negotiating like she's buying a used car. She wants to sleep without nightmares. She wants to look in the mirror without seeing that scar and remembering the moment someone valued their coffee order more than her life. I pulled out the sentencing documents. Victoria Ann Sterling, I find you guilty of assault and battery causing serious bodily harm. Here's your sentence. The courtroom was silent. 90 days in county jail, no work release, no house arrest. You'll serve actual time with actual consequences. Victoria gasped. You can't, I can, and I am. Furthermore, you'll pay full restitution to Emily Martinez. Not through your father, you. $43,000 in medical bills, $20,000 in lost wages and educational expenses, and $50,000 in punitive damages. That's $113,000. Her mouth fell open. Additionally, you'll complete 500 hours of community service. You'll serve coffee to the homeless at St. Catherine's Shelter every Saturday for the next year. Maybe you'll learn what service actually means. But I have commitments, Victoria protested. Charity galas, foundation boards, those commitments just changed. You'll also attend anger management therapy and write a personal apology to every single person who was in that coffee shop the day you attacked Emily. I wasn't finished. And Miss Sterling, one more thing. I'm ordering a psychological evaluation because someone who thinks throwing a laptop at another human being over a coffee order is acceptable needs professional help. Victoria was crying now, but these were angry tears. Tears of someone who'd never been told no. Her attorney tried one last time. Your Honor, this sentence is extraordinarily harsh for a first-time offender. Your client's offense was extraordinarily violent, Counselor. The sentence fits. The gavel came down. As the bailiff approached to take Victoria into custody, she turned desperately to look at the gallery. Her father sat in the back row. I hadn't noticed him enter, but there he was. Marcus Sterling, one of the most powerful men in the country. "Daddy, do something!" Victoria pleaded. Marcus Sterling stood slowly. The entire courtroom watched. And then he spoke, his voice heavy with something I recognized as shame. "Victoria, I've spent your entire life protecting you from your own choices. Judge Scheindlin is right. I should have done this years ago." Then he sat back down. The bailiff led Victoria away, her designer heels clicking one last time against my courtroom floor, each step taking her further from the bubble of privilege she'd lived in her entire life. 6 months later, Victoria returned to my courtroom. Not in handcuffs this time. She asked for a meeting. She stood before me in simple clothes, no designer labels, no sunglasses, no attitude. Just a young woman who looked like she'd finally seen the world beyond her own reflection. "Your Honor," she said quietly, "I wanted to thank you." I raised an eyebrow. "Thank me for sending you to jail. Thank you for making me see Emily, really see her. I'd spent my whole life looking through people instead of at them." Her voice cracked. "I was a monster. I just didn't know it because no one ever made me face it." She pulled out a folder. "I've completed all 500 hours of community service. I'm enrolled in therapy. And I've started a foundation that pays coffee shop workers college tuitions. It's called the Emily Martinez Scholarship Fund." I looked at the documents. Everything was legitimate. "Emily's in the gallery," Victoria said. "She agreed to meet me." I glanced back. Emily sat there, watching carefully. "She doesn't have to forgive me," Victoria continued. "I don't deserve that. But I wanted her to know that who I was that day isn't who I'm going to be for the rest of my life. That's what justice looks like. Not revenge. Not punishment for its own sake. Transformation." Victoria Sterling walked into my courtroom believing wealth made her untouchable. She left understanding that character isn't inherited, isn't purchased, isn't granted by a last name. It's built through facing what you've done and choosing to become better. And Emily Martinez learned something equally important. That the system can work, that people do face consequences, that her life has value that no amount of money can diminish. That's why I sit on this bench. To teach lessons that privilege has left unlearned. To protect people who've been taught they don't matter. To prove that in my courtroom, everyone is equal. Your bank account. Meaningless, your last name. Irrelevant, your character. That's what counts. And that's a lesson money can never buy.